What's up? Welcome to another late episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm your host, Jasmine. Um, yeah, super late. I almost didn't go live at all. So I was getting ready. I normally wear my contacts when I go live, right? And super late. I almost didn't go live at all. Shoot. So I was getting ready. I didn't even know I had my YouTube on. But yeah, so I'm getting ready. Um, I go to put in my contacts because, like, honestly, I don't mind wearing my glasses. It's the glare. I haven't figured out how to like wear my glasses without the glare. Um, but I poked myself in the eye. um, and so that took up my most of my getting ready time. So here I am in a onesie, with my hair looking like whatever, with a little bit of lip gloss on because I didn't want to keep y'all waiting. Anyway, thanks for joining me. I have a few topics to cover. I'm gonna be honest, I did not wake up this morning expecting to talk about the NBA playoffs today. So I'm gonna touch on it a little bit just because I just finished watching the Lakers game and it was phenomenal. Even though the Lakers lost, they put up a good fight. And I saw some impressive things from AD and LeBron. But I don't want to go too deep into it because, like, I want to give the topics justice. Like, I don't want to start talking about a certain player and then kind of forget half the information about him, kind of like I am right now. So I'm gonna quickly touch on a few of the developments that have happened with the NBA playoffs as part of the shout outs and call outs. And then we'll get into what I'm sure everybody wants to talk about, which is the Cowboys topics. The draft just happened this weekend. And then if that wasn't enough, the Cowboys decided to surprise, well, not really a surprise. I think a lot of people saw it coming. But basically present the fan base with the news that Ezekiel Elliott will be returning as part of the running back room. So good times over in Cowboy Nation. But we'll start with talking about the NBA playoffs. So I posted a video earlier of a podcast that I was a guest on, probably about a week and a half ago. And they asked me about the NBA playoffs. It's always interesting when people ask me about things that I don't talk about a lot, kind of like how people do the draft. But we got on the topic of the NBA playoffs, and I had to confess at the time that I didn't see the Suns doing well, despite the fact that the Suns are one of my favorite teams. And Devin Booker is one of my favorite players. But I'm gonna be honest, ever since this new ownership took over, basically ever since they blew up the old roster, I know they were frustrated with, kind of stopping at a certain point in the playoffs, but I just don't feel like the way the roster has been reconstructed has really done them any favors. It almost felt like they just got rid of players just to say that they were changing, and they didn't really have a solid plan for how they wanted to move forward. Because the roster that's been put together, there's no chemistry there. There's honestly, there's really no leadership. And I hate to say that because I was hoping to see Devin Booker emerge as more of a leader. But it's like you've got a big three made up of people who generally aren't reliable, usually because of injuries, and who all seem to be pretty reluctant to be leaders. That's something I've actually thought about with Kevin Durant for a long time. Like literally my first few podcasts that I ever did, when we were covering the Olympics and we were talking about Team USA basketball and how it felt like they kept trying to make Kevin Durant the leader, and we're just like, he's not a leader. Like, stop doing that. Um, but ever since then, I've been saying Kevin Durant wasn't a leader, and I was hoping that now that Devin Booker has been a few years in the league, and with Chris Paul going to another team, I was really hoping that he would emerge as a leader. Not so much. Um, so they just lack chemistry. They seem to lack direction. And I never got the idea at any point during the season that they were going to go very far in the playoffs. So they got swept. It is what it is. I hope that they and other NBA teams learn a lot from the way that roster was constructed. Just that you can't take three players who look good on paper and who are solo stars wherever they are and then just put them together and expect to make it a team. It doesn't work that way. Um, You need a little bit more. And there are some people who want to blame Vogel. Um, and then there are some people who want to blame one player more than another. To me, honestly, there are too many issues to even get into it like that. I'm just gonna say they made a mistake whenever they blew the roster apart. I'm gonna read a couple of y'all's comments. Clement was commenting before I went live. Thank you so much. Willie said, Jazzy still look good. Thank you. I appreciate that because I really do be self conscious when I don't have time to like get ready. But I was just like, well, here's what I was telling myself when I was about to go live. I was like, if I can go live with my glasses on in a onesie, then it'll be easier for me to go live more often. Because I won't feel like I have to like put on contacts and lashes and a full face of makeup. I'll just be like, whatever. They see me like that sometimes, and sometimes they see me like this, and it's fine. So thank you. Clement says, I'm not feeling the Zeke signing at all. Feels like a welcome back reunion to appease Dak, who is now on the final year of his contract. It's looking like he will be the starting running back. Uh, I feel like that's a conclusion that a lot of people are jumping to, and it has less to do with anything anybody has actually said about Ezekiel Elliott, and more to do with the fact that before Ezekiel Elliott got signed, nobody knew who the starting running back was going to be. And so now everybody's like, oh, it must be Zeke, and that sucks. And I think both of those statements are a little bit inaccurate, but we'll get into that in a second. And lastly, the Cowboys are now talking about adding veterans to this team, as they should. Um, I don't want to get too much into that yet, but I'm glad y'all are excited about the Cowboys topics because we're going to get into that. Before we get into that, I literally have just 2 shout outs and call outs because I do plan on going live multiple times this week. So even though there's a lot to talk about, I really only have 2 call outs and shout outs. Call outs and shout outs. That echo in my ears still messes with me. Okay, so first one, and of course the window closed. Hold on. Okay, so the first one is a shout out to the NFL for their developments in the use of Guardian caps. And give me 1 second. So I'm going to tell y'all what I'm looking for because I can talk to y'all and talk about the story at the same time. So basically, as the draft was going on, the NFL released the news that they were going to allow NFL players to wear Guardian caps during the regular season. And in the past, they've only been worn during training camp. So for anybody who's not really sure what I'm talking about with the Guardian caps, they're the little like puffy things, the little puffy bumpy things that players wear over their helmets during training camp. And it's been a requirement during training camps. And they found evidence that it actually is decreasing the occurrences of concussions. So shout out to them for that. But the thing was, a lot of players complained about them being too hot, being too heavy, they're bulky, they don't like the way that they look, so on and so forth. So the NFL was like, okay, so this year we're actually going to make it an option to wear the Guardian caps during the regular season. And a lot of people saw that and was like, nobody's going to do that. But for whatever reason, the news that wasn't announced as much along with that is the fact that the NFL has 12 new helmet designs that are coming out this season, and 6 of them, through testing, they actually think are safer than the Guardian caps. And by safer, I mean they do more to minimize the risk of concussions. So there's actually 6 helmet options that players are going to have to wear during training camp, as opposed to the Guardian caps. So it's like, yes, the NFL is like, sure, you can wear the Guardian caps during the regular season, or you can also wear one of these other helmets that has been designed and developed since last year. And the article I'm looking for, I think I might have up on my phone, so I'm gonna look there real quick because it's just not coming back up on my computer. That whole reopen close tab thing is not working out for me. It's not coming up on my phone either. I basically just wanted to give y'all a list of the helmets. Um, a lot of them were from Rydell. I remember that much. Okay, here it is. So yeah, three of them are from Rydell. One of them is a Zenith helmet, and one of them is a VICIS. I guess that's pronounced Vicus. I'm not sure. But yeah, so Riddell has been doing a lot in terms of trying to develop helmet technology. So here's what the NFL actually says about the performance results. Um, it says the annual helmet testing by the NFL and NFLPA is complete. 12 new helmets to choose from, including 8 position specific ones for quarterbacks, offensive linemen, and defensive linemen. And 6 performed so well wearing them will be exempt from wearing Guardian caps in practice. Whoever wrote that tweet, I think skipped a few words, but y'all get the idea. So not only did they develop 12 new helmets, 8 of them are position specific, which is amazing because that says a lot about what they've done in terms of developing the technology and making sure that not only is the technology appropriate for the sport, but for what certain players will experience as they're playing the sport. So that's pretty awesome. As far as the Guardian caps, it says some players complained that the caps were hot, especially during summer practices, and the exemption could be an incentive for players to choose the higher performing helmets. 6 helmets are newly prohibited this year, and 5 more have been moved to the not recommended category. So what that means is that there were 11 helmets total that before the NFL was like, yes, these are safe, wear them. And 6 of them have actually since then been put on a list that said where the NFL says, actually don't wear these. And then 5 of them are like, you can wear them, but we really don't recommend that you do. So what that tells me is that they're being thorough in their testing. They're not just taking new products and saying, hey, let's see how safe these are. They're actually going back and testing some of the old helmets so that they can give players current information, which I think is even more awesome. I know the NFL gets a bad rap in terms of player injuries, concussions, and some of the things that the players go through. But this does seem like an area where they are trying to do better and they are trying to make improvements. Do they have a long way to go? Yes. Will there be some other rules that might piss people off in the meantime? Absolutely. I'm sure of it. But for right now, they do seem to be doing a really thorough job of their helmet testing. So shout out to them for that. Tyrone said, do they have more pads inside the helmet or different material in the shell of the helmet? Let me see if they have any information on that. I know, just generally speaking, from what I know about helmet technology in general, usually what it has to do with is the shape of the helmet and how the helmet fits on the head. So in the past, there have been helmets that they literally take either a mold or a scan of a player's head and they design the inside of the helmet to fit differently for everybody's head. And basically what that ensures is that there's less chance of your head rattling around in the helmet and therefore less chance of your brain rattling around in your head. Let's see if in this article they include any information. It doesn't say specifically. For the quarterback helmets, it says quarterbacks will have a choice between 2 helmets, one made by Vicus and one made by Riddell, designed specifically to reduce the impact of blows they suffer when their heads hit the ground, which causes most quarterback concussions. Having more options in different styles, even from the outside and the inside of the helmet, that's going to be a big thing. Let's see. It says next they're going to test different types of helmets for defensive backs and wide receivers. But yeah, not a lot of information here about what makes them different. But I can look into that for you. Clement says, happy that the NFL is making strides to make the game safer, especially in the case of concussions. But at the same time, they're taking the fundamentals of defense away from the defenders. A lot of people feel like you feel, Clement, and I don't want to say there's nothing they can do about that. I just think it's going to, kind of like with the helmets, it's going to take a little bit of time, right? So the same way that I just read hey, there were 11 helmets that they thought were perfectly safe. As a matter of fact, they thought they were great helmets at one point, and now those helmets are considered either unsafe or not recommended. I think the same thing is going to happen with rules and certain recommended tackling methods and other techniques involving gameplay. I think they're going to put some things in place. The fan base won't respond well to some things. Some things may not prove to be as much of an improvement as they believe it will be, and they'll just have to adjust. They revisit all of these things every year. So, like I said a second ago, people are going to be frustrated in the meantime, but it kind of is what it is. All right. So the next shout out goes to, I'm laughing as I think about this, but the next shout out goes to Caleb Williams. And I got to pull up this video because I was talking about this earlier on Twitter. And I said, Caleb Williams might be a villain. And I know this is kind of an odd shout out, and some of y'all might look at it as a call out, but it just felt appropriate with the NFL draft having just completed. And before the draft happened, I posted the video that we're about to watch. I posted it to Twitter, and I talked about how just motivating it was to see his work ethic on display in the way that he told the story, to see what kind of competitor he is. I even talked about the fact that he mentioned his competitive drive and the fact that he wanted the QB1 role at Oklahoma, but without disrespecting his competition, which at the time was Spencer Rattler. And then for some reason, when I went and looked back at the video again, I was like, no, the fact that he even said this out loud is actually kind of disrespectful. So for those who aren't familiar, it's part of the interview he did with The Pivot, where Caleb Williams talks about going to Oklahoma, knowing that Spencer Rattler was QB1 at the time, and that he was an anticipated number 1 draft pick in the NFL, and still making it a goal of his to beat him out for the QB1 spot anyway. Like, he went into Oklahoma with that goal. And I don't know. I guess something about Spencer Rattler ending up being drafted in the 5th round instead of in the 1st round, as was anticipated just a few years ago. I was just like, considering that Caleb Williams seemed to have an issue with this man, this just seems like the perfect ending to his plot. So I'm going to play the video and I'm going to pause at one spot because I want to see if y'all see what I see. Let me open this for you guys.
Time when you made a decision to go to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler was a projected 1st round pick the next year.
Yeah.
You had to pivot because they decided to start the guy that was supposed to be a 1st round pick that year. Is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Why'd you choose to go there then?
Development.
So you thought that...
I'd known that Lincoln was the best in the country.
So why did it hurt you, though, that the income...
Because I was the best in the country.
Okay, so tell me if this smile looks a little bit evil. Like the way he smiles and he's like, because I was the best in the country. Hold on, I'm going to play it again.
So that the income...
Because I was the best in the country.
And it's like, I get it. It's like, we want our athletes to be competitive, but for some reason, looking back at that, and I hope I'm not the only one who sees it, and I'm just like laughing at this by myself, but it's like he almost looks evil. As a matter of fact, hold on, I'm going to keep playing it.
Explain that to me. You make a decision to go to the school that has a starter that's coming back, that's supposed to be a 1st round pick.
I told many people before I went there. And there's a backstory to it also. I was so...
Like, doesn't this interview start to get the feeling of like, have you ever watched one of those scary movies where like the detective goes to talk to like a serial killer or somebody, and you know they're in some like special prison where they can like still talk face to face, but they're alone, and the detective or the investigator, reporter, whoever sits down and has a conversation with this person about why they're a psychopath? Like, am I the only one who gets these vibes from this interview as he's talking about taking Spencer Rattler's spot? Hold on.
Fired up.
Hold on. I need y'all to see this how I see it. So let me pull something else up real quick because like I'm imagining this like literally as like a scary movie. Hold on, let me try it this way. I'm gonna add some music to it. Just go with me on this one. Go with me on this one.
At the time, when you made a decision to go to Oklahoma,
Yeah.
Spencer Rattler was a projected first-round pick
Yeah.
the next year.
Yeah.
You had to pivot because they decided to start the guy that was supposed to be a first-round pick that year, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Why'd you choose to go there?
Development.
So you thought that...
I'd known that Lincoln was the best in the country.
So why did it hurt you, though, that the incumbents...
Because I was the best in the country.
Explain that to me. You make a decision to go to the school that has a starter that's coming back, that's supposed to be a first-round pick.
I told many people before I went there, and there's a backstory to it also. I was so fired up. I told people before I went there that I was gonna start and play and beat him out. I thought I beat him out in spring, and he was projected #1 and all of that. So he started for 6 games, and so I prepared. I kept preparing. Lincoln told me, keep going. It's something that I didn't understand. Those 2 words I did not understand when he told me, because I wasn't asking him. I wasn't coming to him to beg for playing time. I never came to him. I came to him and asked him, how do I do it? How do I beat this dude out? Because he never let me get reps with the first team. He never let me get reps with, the older guys and things like that. So he told me, keep going. He didn't give me any other advice. So that's his words that he told me. And at the time, I was so angry, so frustrated, because I didn't feel like that wasn't what I wanted to hear. Because I felt like I was the best. I felt like I could have helped us win, all the games, getting more reps, getting later in the season, and I'm ready for those moments, later in the season. So I didn't get those reps. So I kept preparing as best that I could. So when I had my moment, there was no way that he was ever going to get it back.
Okay, I'm done. I just like with the music in the background, it takes on a whole different. That's a whole different vibe. Oh my goodness, I need to post that to Twitter tomorrow. 100%, I need to post that. I just need to know that somebody else sees it. All right, so yeah. So continuation of that story. Not only was Spencer Rattler not drafted in the first round, he ended up being drafted in the 5th round. And I just feel like we should follow up with Caleb at this point and just ask him how he feels about that. As a matter of fact, he says in the video that there was a backstory that related to why he was so determined to beat out Spencer Rattler for his spot. And I'm really curious about that backstory. On Twitter, a couple of people kind of mentioned that when Spencer Rattler was younger, at least, he was really cocky. He did this reality show / documentary called QB1 that I did not see, but people can't stop talking about it when they talk about why they don't like this man. And from what I hear about how he presented his character, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe he said something that got back to Caleb through the grapevine. And Caleb, being the petty competitor that he is, Caleb being the one to, as he confessed himself, he holds grudges. Like he likes to get back at people. He thinks it's fun. I could see him carrying that with him for years and like really relishing in the fact that this guy didn't get drafted until the 5th round and then ended up with the Saints. It's not like, of course it's kind of known that the way the NFL draft works, the best players end up going to the quote unquote worst teams, right? But at least, for example, in Caleb's situation, he's going to a team where he's expected to be the guy. Spencer Rattler is going to the Saints, who have been in complete disarray for like 2 seasons, and he's expected to be the backup to Derek Carr. Like, nothing about that is a glamorous or favorable situation for a young quarterback. This is like, it's like you went from being a projected #1 draft pick to just going into his own personal quarterback purgatory. not like the purgatory what the Cowboys went through where they were trying to find a quarterback, but like his own purgatory where it's like he probably knows internally that he still has certain skills, but for some reason he's just never going to get a chance to really put them on display. And he'll never really know if his team needs them or not because he's just as mediocre as the guy who they have starting. Like it almost sounds like torture for someone who's an actual competitor. I'm starting to really feel bad that I gave Caleb Williams a shout out for this. But there it is. Shout out to Caleb Williams for being the new sneaky NFL villain. Okay, on that note, let's talk about the Cowboys and this draft. So in my thumbnail, I talked about them piecing it together. And that's mainly because as I watched the draft, one of the main things that stuck out in my mind was what Mike McCarthy said during the pre-draft press conference, because out of everyone on that panel, he seemed to be the best at actually sticking to the topic of the draft. But one of the things that he mentioned when they were asking him about basically what their strategy was going to be for drafting, what they were looking for, he, in so many words, said that the Dallas Cowboys weren't necessarily looking to replace players they'd lost, like player for player. Like, we lost this many from this position, we need to replace it this way. We need to find someone who does this the way this person does it and draft them and put them in this place. He described their process more as almost starting from scratch, just understanding what they have, understanding what their goals are, and finding people who can contribute and who he thought, or who the decision makers thought, could come in and contribute, even if they didn't end up being like a mirror image of somebody whose spot they were filling in. And based on that criteria, I would say that they did a pretty good job. I think a lot of people going into the draft, and by a lot of people, I mean fans, a lot of fans were hoping that they would do something about the O-line situation, and they definitely did. And I would say they addressed the major needs, except for running back. And honestly, it's like I want to be surprised by it, but I'm not really, mainly because they had so many running backs already in the running back room, and it wasn't really clear who they were going to cut. And so it's like, I think it would be different if they literally only had one running back or two running backs. Then I might be a little bit more upset about it. But the fact that they had like, it's like 5 or 6, one of them. But the fact that they already had like 5 or 6, I'm like, okay, they probably feel like they can just find one more piece from somewhere and they'll be okay. So I didn't make nearly as big of a deal about the whole situation with them not drafting a running back as I think some other people did. And I also think I was a bit more excited about some of their picks than other people were. So I'm looking at the list here, just starting from the top with Tyler Guyton. I was excited about the Tyler Guyton pick for a couple of reasons. So if anybody actually watched the broadcast that I did with Law and friends, shout out to Law again for that opportunity. That was so much fun. But at the time, so before the draft started, I was kind of thinking that they might go with like a Graham Barton type. But I even said before the draft started, I was like, look, if somebody wants to take this 24th spot and they're willing to offer more picks in exchange for it, by all means do it, because the Cowboys just in general didn't have enough picks, you know? So when they made the trade, Barton was still on the board. So it was like, okay, they actually might be able to have their cake and eat it too. Barton came off the board before they got their pick, and they ended up going with Tyler Guyton, who a lot of people have been criticizing a little bit, right? So I will admit, the guy needs a good bit of development and a good bit of work. Anyway, the guy needs a good bit of development and a good bit of work. Let me see if I can get it to turn back on. Sometimes I can. I figured out what it is with this light, actually. So blue, I think it just didn't charge long enough. So blue is the hottest color, right? It's the hottest wavelength. So basically, anytime I put this light on blue, I'm basically cutting down on the battery power. So hopefully the picture still looks okay. Anyway, so yeah, Tyler Guyton does need a good bit of work. But one, he seems aware of that. And two, even despite the work that he does need to do, he still managed to put some impressive things on film. And by impressive, I mean, to my knowledge, he didn't allow any sacks in 2023. Um, when you watch him, you can see his athleticism. It's not like he's like, oh man, not only does he not know what to do, he doesn't seem to know how to do it. No, the dude is athletic. The dude he can move. He's a force to be reckoned with. I think there are just some things he needs to be more consistent at. So when it comes to the knee bend, which if you've heard me talk about knee bend, it goes along with ankle bend as well. There's footage of him doing it, right? It's not like he can't do it. He doesn't do it consistently. And when he's up high, he does get moved around a little bit. I'll put it that way. I was watching Vach's evaluation of Guyton, and he described his footwork as having a lot of false steps. That is also a thing. But like I said, there were some other people on the Oklahoma O-line who also had some weird things going on with their feet. So I almost just want to think that that was something that just wasn't coached out of him very well. I don't think that's something that he's incapable of fixing. Because of what I saw just from the other people who were next to him, I'm inclined to believe that that's just something that wasn't addressed adequately. And once it is, he'll be fine. So do I think Guyton is like the perfect O-lineman? Do I think he's a perfect tackle? No. But I do think he's got size. What is he, like 6'8", 300 something pounds, like 11% body fat? Dude is a freaking boulder. And once he refines some of his technique, he's going to be amazing. So yes, especially considering that at the time Barton was already off the board, I was really excited about us getting Guyton. So that's my perception of him. Now, Cooper Beebe. He is someone who, for the longest time, I did not understand why he was so low on so many people's boards. And I finally had the opportunity to ask somebody about this, and they were like, oh, it's because of his arm length. And I'm just like, really? Out of everything that this guy has put on film, it's because he has short arms that y'all put him down in the third round, which, like, okay, awesome, great. Because, like, all the talk about him being a third rounder, I think, is what allowed him to still be available for the Cowboys to draft him, because I truly believe that had people really just looked at what a dominant force he is, he would have gone earlier. Like, just looking at his film and seeing the fact that he can play pretty much any position on the O-line and how dominant he is as a physical force, the way he just moves guys, like, it's ridiculous. He is absolutely a joy to watch if you enjoy watching O-linemen, like, really do their thing, right? And so, yeah, I just don't understand how you look at that kind of film, look at someone being so dominant, look at someone repeatedly putting dudes in the ground and be like, well, he's got short arms. That might not go well for him in the NFL. So once again, I'm just like, all right, I'm almost more excited about Cooper Beebe than I am about Guyton, just because I feel like Beebe is a little bit more ready. In terms of his attitude, in terms of his approach to the positions that he plays. Like, I worry, like, just off the top of my head, I worry less about what Beebe would do if he were to start a game than I worry about what Guyton would do, honestly. So yeah, if it was short arms that got him to the Cowboys, cool. It is what it is. But I'm really excited about those two and seeing what they can do. A few other pieces that the Cowboys added, because the O-line definitely needed to be addressed. So, Lufau, that's another one that seems to be really controversial among fans. And at some point, we will go more in depth into this, like, position by position, but I'm just kind of running down the draft picks. Probably after I have a chance to look at the UDFAs a little bit more, we're going to revisit all these people. So for anybody who's like, man, she's just kind of like running through these, that is by design. But Lufau is another one that a lot of people seem to have mixed feelings on. There are some people who are really excited about him and what we saw from him at Notre Dame. And then there are some people who seem to think that he's hesitant and not ready. And the interesting thing is, I think people are seeing the same things. and interpreting them in two different ways. I think there are some people who watch him and they're like, okay, he's really good at evaluating the situation. He doesn't get baited very easily. He's got a high level of awareness. Once he makes a decision, he's sure about it. And then there are other people who watch him and they're like, he's too hesitant. He's not aggressive enough. And so I would need to hear a little bit more from all of those people to know for sure. But it really sounds like people are describing the same thing, but they just have different perceptions of what they're seeing and what that means. I'm definitely in the camp of him having a high level of awareness and not getting baited easily, only because when he does go in to make contact, he doesn't look hesitant. Like usually when I see a hesitant player, they look hesitant all the way through. Like even when they do go for a tackle, it's almost like they don't go in with enough force. They don't go in with enough certainty. It's like they're waiting for something to happen to make them have to do something different or second guess themselves. Whereas with Leufau, maybe he didn't always go when people wanted him to go or when people expected him to go. But I feel like once he went, he went. And so that to me said that he was evaluating every situation, and that he made the decision that he felt was best. And then he went for it 100%. And I feel like that explanation also aligns with what a lot of people are saying about his high level of football IQ, which is definitely something that I feel like doesn't get enough acknowledgement when it comes to linebackers. Just how important it is to be a smart player, to have a high IQ and have a high level of awareness, especially if you're going to be a Mike linebacker, which several people have anticipated that'll be his role. I know in the past, the Cowboys have had trouble finding somebody to play the whole green dot role because apparently that's not a simple role to play. And it seems like the main issue with finding someone to play the green dot role has been finding someone who can both direct other people, but not get so distracted by directing other people that they become hesitant or it slows them down. And so if we have someone who's already used to being cerebral, who's already used to evaluating the game as it unfolds and still making a decision and making it with aggression and with certainty, maybe they feel like he's someone that they can, maybe not immediately, but eventually plug into that role. So I like what I've seen from him. I think he's a good piece to the linebacker puzzle. I'm excited about it. Now, the rest of these guys, I'm a little bit less familiar with. I'll admit. Let's see who we have here. I don't have anything in my notes. Not really. So I won't, hold on, let me read this comment. Guyton is athletic and also physical in the run game. This is from Clement. So needs to work more on his setup in pass protection and a little upright in his setup in pass protection. He is upright a lot, more often than I'd like him to be. But he's not incapable of getting lower. He's not incapable of bending the knees, or I don't know. I'm gonna say this. All the terms you draft people use, I get them confused because as a personal trainer, I use different words for all these things. And so when y'all are like anchor, I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like as a trainer, that's a phrase that I've never had to use. And so sometimes I get nervous about saying the wrong thing. But yes, he is capable of getting low. He is capable of getting in the right position. I've seen him do everything that he needs to do at least once. No, more than once. I shouldn't even say that. I shouldn't say at least once. It's definitely been more than once. But enough to know that he can do it. But also I've seen him not do it enough to know that he needs to be way more consistent. And there's one more comment that I need to scroll up in order to see. Oh, Roy just said BB was probably his favorite pick. I think BB was a lot of people's favorite picks. Oh, Roy also said, we haven't done enough to stop the run with DTs, in my opinion. I need to really look into it. So I'll say, when the draft is happening, I have no regrets about not like really watching as many players as I'd like. It's usually afterwards when I'm like, dang, now I got to learn all these new Cowboys players And I wish I had watched more film. That's when I start regretting it. So it's like that'll probably be my motivation next year, is that like I don't want to get to this point and then have to like play catch up. Um, but the reason why I'm saying that is because when it comes to DTs, I think the main thing that we need to be sure of right now is having a one tech, and I'm not certain that we have that. So I'm looking at the information that some people have on Justin Rogers. Yes, I'm looking at other people's notes. And it looks like he is an anticipated one tech. So, okay, there's that. But at the same time, let's see. Mm-mm-mm. It looks like people are mostly saying that because, like, more so because of his size than his ability. Like, I'm seeing phrases like he held his own, he can clog the middle. Nobody seems to be particularly impressed with him. So, Clement, if you have an opinion on Justin Rogers, feel free to throw that in the chat. But when it comes to DTs, that was my main concern. I'm just like, with us losing Hankins and Mozzie's status being unknown, I guess I still don't know what's going on with that. I was like, okay, do we have a one tech? Because people kept saying things like, should we draft an O lineman or should we draft a one tech? And I'm like, well, it depends on if you're talking about or no, they were saying O lineman or a defensive tackle, and I'm like, it depends on if you mean like a guard or a center, or if you mean like a one tech or a three tech. like we got to get specific here for me to really decide. So that was my main concern. And yes, I agree with you, Roy. Hankins was absolutely a big loss because of the situation that we're in. Clement says, Jazz, I don't know much about Justin Rogers as I don't watch Auburn games. I don't either. So I'm going to add him to the list of people that I'm going to look into as I'm looking at these undrafted free agents. But looking at the positions of the people who I haven't talked about. So the people that I named are pretty much the people that I actually watch and pay the most attention to. So we've got Kalen Carson at cornerback. I did watch a little bit of him after the draft was announced. And I feel like he's pretty solid. Like, I've seen some people use the word elite when describing him. I don't know if I would call him elite, but I'm excited to have him in the cornerback room. And I feel like it's necessary considering that Trayvon Diggs is coming off of an injury, and just historically, players coming off of an ACL injury, even when they're given the proper amount of time to return, their return has been a little bit unpredictable, you know? So it's like they'll go out there, they'll do what they're supposed to do as far as like playing their role, but returning to their previous level of athleticism, it seems to take them a good bit longer than the anticipated recovery time to get back to that point. So drafting a cornerback, I'm all for it. And who else? Marshawn Nealon. He's somebody I probably should have looked at more. I just get more excited about offensive players than defensive ones. But he was one of those names that I heard a lot, but I was just kind of like, oh, I'll get to it eventually. And then I never did. But he's one of the people who seemed like when people describe what they're looking for in someone that Mike Zimmer would want at defensive end, he's that guy. He's that guy. He's got the size. Let's see. I don't even have my own notes up here. Let me go back to this window. Yeah, 6'3", and I'm looking for his weight. I know it was 200. It was 260, 267. Yeah, so 6'3", 267. He's got the size. He's got the grittiness. He's another run stopper, which is what a lot of people were like, can we please get some people who can stop the run? And he's one of the players that, if you've heard people talk about the fact that this draft class is very gritty, they're bringing a certain level of toughness to the team. He's definitely one of the players that kind of fits into that category. As like when you watch him, he plays with a certain level of nastiness. When he talks about what he wants to bring to his role on the team, He's another one of those players who like Guyton, like some of the other players who was drafted, talks about, wanting to hurt people. So, like, they definitely have that attitude. Like, they're ready to come in and do damage. Naturally, we're going to have to see what they do during camp, right? I think it's really easy for a rookie who's never been in the situation to kind of, I don't want to say fantasize, but I guess predict good things for themselves. And as well they should. Like, who wouldn't want to go into a situation like this manifesting positivity, right? But basically, we've got to see if they can back up their words once they're actually in the situation. So I honestly think, even without looking at the UDFA so far, I think it's going to be a fun camp. I think we're going to see some good competitions on the O-line. I honestly, even though I say Guyton has a lot of work to do, I thoroughly expect him to win a spot. I expect him to be better than Chuma Edoga. I expect him to be better than Awesome Richards. I expect him to end up standing next to Tyler Smith and, them taking care of Dak's blindside. So I expect to see him out there. I expect to see Cooper Beebe out there. I think the O-line competition at training camp is going to be fun. I don't know if I'll be there, but if any of you are going to be there, and I've said this in a couple of spaces, I just want a picture of Deuce Vaughn running behind Tyler Guyton. That's all I want. If somebody can just get me that picture, if somebody could get me that video, I would be very appreciative. It would mean the world to me. If I can get there myself, I'll get it myself. But if not, I need somebody to, because it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. At some point, they're going to run some combination of players to where Deuce Vaughn is going to have to run behind Tyler Guyton. And I just need somebody to get me a video. That would make my summer. Clement says, Marshawn Nealon is an interesting prospect at DE for this team. He was a problem for Iowa last season in the highlights that I watched. Okay, I'll take that. Like I said, he's one that I wish I would have watched more. And like I said, it's been interesting just going back and watching some of these players and trying to kind of piece together what Mike McCarthy was referring to when he said that he was trying to, he didn't use the word start from scratch, but that's kind of how I interpreted his words when he said that they weren't trying to match their new players in place of their old players, like position for position and player for player. He said that they were looking for people who could come in and make an impact. And I think some people even interpreted that as, oh, like they're going to draft BPA. I don't think that's what he meant. I think he just meant like they were going to be as smart as possible in whatever situation they were in. And so when it came to the trade that they made that a lot of people were excited about in the first round, I would say that was definitely them making a very smart move. And I think them picking people who not only have a certain set of skills, but also bring a certain attitude to the table is definitely a smart move, especially considering everything that we've heard about concerning culture, concerning accountability. Not that I expect rookies to come in and start setting the tone in terms of culture, right? But I do believe that when you have an influx of people who could potentially be competition, it does kind of cause everybody to step their game up a little bit, even the people who are more certain about what their role is going to be in the future, right? So as much as I'm excited about the physical gifts of these people, I get really excited listening to their interviews, listening to what they have to say about what they expect to do for the team, and kind of listening to how they talk about their attitude towards their relative positions. Now, as I stated earlier, in addition to the players that were drafted and the Cowboys actually doing an excellent job during the draft, the front office decided to gift the fan base with the news that Ezekiel Elliott would be returning as a running back. And that news seems to have been way more controversial than I anticipated it would be. And I think it has to do with a lot of assumptions that are being made about Ezekiel Elliott and what he's going to do on the team and what he's going to bring to the team. So let's start off with the on-field stuff. There seems to be a certain segment of the fan base that is under the impression that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be like RB1. I'm not so sure. I really think that they're going to do this whole running back by committee thing in such a way where unless someone is just like truly outperforming everybody else, it might not be as clear who is RB1. And I say that just looking at the traits of everybody who's in the running back room right now. There's no obvious pair. And before Ezekiel Elliott was signed, it wasn't obvious who was going to be RB1. And I haven't really heard anything that suggests that they decided that at any point. And I definitely didn't see anything from Ezekiel Elliott that suggests that he would be a shoo-in. Now, what I will say about Ezekiel Elliott that I think might end up being a pleasant surprise for the fan base is the fact that the last time the Cowboys saw him, the last time he was in a Cowboys uniform, we hadn't seen a healthy Ezekiel Elliott in a while. He suffered a calf strain at the end of 2020, and I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember reading about him just going super hard during the offseason and not necessarily taking the amount of rest after that calf strain that he probably should have. And then earlier in 2021, I think is when he had the PCL injury. This is why I should have show notes so I could just like read these off of a list. But early in 2021, he had the PCL injury, right? And he never took the recommended amount of time off after that injury, and he ended up suffering 2 more knee injuries during 2021, and those things kind of carried over. And basically, when we last saw him, he had never really spent the recommended amount of recovery time after an injury that he was supposed to. So although there are a lot of people who are like, well, he just didn't seem like himself. He didn't have that same punch. He wasn't as aggressive. He wasn't as forceful. He also wasn't as healthy. And so that's one difference that I think that we'll see in Zeke is that all last season, I think there was one time he was on an injury report because I remember somebody talking about it, but he ended up playing that weekend. I don't think he missed any games due to injury. He didn't suffer any major injury. So him coming back to the Cowboys, this might be, assuming that there's nothing hidden in there, right? This might be, for a lot of Cowboys fans, our first time seeing a healthy Ezekiel Elliott literally in years. So do I expect him to get 25 carries a game? I'm not expecting that. But do I think that he can put up a performance that will surprise the fan base? Yeah, I think he could, because I think that's what happens when people heal and are allowed to recover and get healthier, you know? So I'm actually excited for what he's going to bring to the table. I don't know what his role is going to end up being. The same way that I'm saying I don't see him being RB1, I could absolutely be wrong. But I'm excited for what he's going to do just because he'll be healthy, because he's coming back to a team that definitely has a role for him, that definitely wants him. And I think he's also going to make an impact both on the field and off the field. And Roy says he won't be the back that he used to be, but he can be useful for us. I think that's fair. I think that's a fair evaluation. But in terms of off the field, that's been the thing that it's really been hard for me to not think about. And a big part of that is because all off season, while watching film, evaluating players, all of that is still relatively new to me. Brian Bradford says, any update on the Dak case? Just curious. I actually do have an update on that. Thank you for reminding me. I'm gonna talk about that as soon as I'm done talking about Zeke. If I start to sign off and you are still here, make sure you say something in the chat. And yes, I'm laughing for a reason. Make sure you say something in the chat. Don't let me sign off without giving you this update. But yeah, so the off the field things. Yeah, watching film, player evaluations, all that is new to me. But when it comes to telling the story, when it comes to thinking about things like locker room chemistry, the culture of a team, all those things are things that I'm very much used to. And I couldn't help but think about all the things that Micah and CD said about the kind of leaders that they want to be and the role they wanted to improve the culture and accountability on the team. Um, and it just had me wondering what it's going to mean for a presence like Ezekiel Elliott to return to the locker room, and if that would discourage. I'm more worried about, and worried might not be the right word, but I'm more so thinking about CD than Micah, obviously, because, Micah's on the defense, and he's also very used to being vocal. CD, on the other hand, being a vocal leader would have been very new for him. And when he described it on Micah's podcast, he almost described it as though it was a role that he felt like he had to step into because nobody else was doing it. So with him being wide receiver one, he's like, all right, well, I need to do this. So now I'm just like, okay, with Zeke coming back, what is that dynamic going to be like? And so I just want to quickly review some of the things that they said just to put in context some of the questions that I'm asking right now.
I could be more vocal. I could be more of a leader. You know what I'm saying? I could be more vocal, even though I know that's not me. But understanding the situation, bro. If I'm gonna take this label of being one, I take full accountability, bro. If I want to take this label of being one, I can't. It's times where I got to get out my shell. You know what I'm saying? My comfort zone.
And you got to rally the offense.
You feel me? And
Dak, find me.
Like, Dak, come on. Or, Dak, I'm not open on this. You got B Cooks on whatever. Or you got MG on this. I could do this and do, you know what I'm saying? There's plenty of ways of doing
Feedback.
it.
Instead of just getting angry,
Yeah,
down.
and then getting quiet, and then nobody have answers. And now we look defeated on the
Lost.
sideline. We down 14.
You said y'all could be the number one offense.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. So you're and please say this to the world, the people, that Dax can take us there. Please.
Dak can definitely lead us.
And,
He just also need other leaders. And that's why I'm pointing at myself. Because I can help him. You know what I'm saying? It's only so much he can do. He already got so much on his plate. You feel what I'm saying?
so much.
What do you feel as if, not even that the people want to hear, what do you feel that we need to do as a team, as a unit, and us as the upcoming leaders? Granted, we are the leaders, but understanding this role that we in, that you feel like we got to do to go. You say we got to get over this hump. I know
For me, we need to establish our culture. We need to identify our captains early in the season. We need to paint a better picture of who we want to be, fix our mistakes. People need to have way more accountability. I just think we let things slide too often because we know we're good. And
Absolutely.
so that's all about me, bro. I want to change the culture. I want to change the identity of what the Cowboys are. Cut the charades out. Cut the extra stuff out. I just want people to lock in for 22 or whatever.
22 weeks, bro. 22 weeks. I know it's long,
I always say,
but it's so fun when you win it. I'm telling you that now.
7 months can change your life.
7 months, bro.
And
And
I'm ready.
we got to lock in. Let's do it.
So, yeah, if you want to see the whole thing, just go to YouTube and type in CD Lamb, Micah Parsons, Bleacher Report, and it'll come up. But they spent a good portion of that podcast talking about the need for an improvement in culture, the need for accountability, their desire to be leaders. CD talked about specifically wanting to be a vocal leader, wanting to help Dak, and stepping up into this role as wide receiver one. And so just considering all that and thinking about a presence like Ezekiel Elliott being in the room, it just kind of had me wondering how that's going to work out. Because I feel like it wasn't publicized as much, like, through the years. Like it kind of felt like it wasn't until it was announced that Zeke was going to be leaving that people actually finally started talking about, like, oh, well, this guy actually plays like a big role in locker room leadership and culture. And so, yeah, that's one of the things I'm curious about, because I think it does impact the chemistry. And as a matter of fact, that's one of the things that CeeDee Lamb actually talked about during that interview. It wasn't in the clip that I just showed you, but he was talking about his own attitude and how certain things that he said and did were contagious. So he needed to be more careful. He said that he needed to grow up. And he said that he needed to monitor his own attitude because of how it affects the rest of the team. So I don't know. I'm curious if y'all have any thoughts about just, if CD is trying to be a vocal leader and Ezekiel Elliott returns and he's also a leader. Do y'all see that being like a harmonious situation, or do y'all see that like there being some contention there? I honestly, the more I think about it, I think it's going to be a harmonious situation, and I think it'll actually be good. Zeke is on a 1 year deal. And I mean, who knows? He might stick around after that. The Cowboys seem to love him. But even if he does, the likelihood of him being around as long as CD Lamb is slim. So there's a really good chance that, you know, well, I shouldn't say really good chance, but I guess what I'm hoping, what I think could be a best case scenario is that Zeke actually helps CD become this vocal leader that he says he wants to be. Roy says, I think they'll be fine, honestly. Clement says, is there any updates on CD's contract situation considering that Detroit paid Amon-Ra St. Brown and Philadelphia paid both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown? Um, no, there haven't been any updates. And they actually asked Jerry Jones about that in one of the interviews, and I'm going to talk about later this week. But there haven't been any updates. I think Jerry Jones is still waiting on some other leaves to fall. And one of the things I want to look at is I was talking to somebody earlier about the media rights deals, and I felt like an idiot because they were like, well, no, those are locked in. And it's not the media rights deals that I think would impact anything, but it's some of the revenue that they might get from various broadcasts. So, for example, although the media rights deals are done, they're in place until 2033. They are adding some broadcasts to Amazon. And so how well, or is it Peacock? It's one of them. They're doing something on Christmas Day on one of the streaming platforms, but things like that could potentially affect the salary cap. And so what I actually want to do is go back through the CBA and look at the various sources of revenue that can impact the salary cap and just see if there's anything in there that makes sense to wait for. Because I'm just kind of getting the feeling from some of the things that Jerry Jones has said that it's something besides watching other players get paid that he's waiting for. And I know in my last video, I said it was, watching other players get paid. And that might have been right. But I want to look at this other stuff too. I just want to present some different options for you guys until they make a decision. So we have other things to talk about, basically. Brian Bradford says his leadership will be tested depending how long he holds out. I guess you're talking about CD. I'm not sure if him holding out will actually impact his role on the team. In the past, the players have been very supportive of other players who are holding out and, trying to do what they have to do when it comes to contract negotiations. So I can see why people might think that, just his physical presence not being there. But I don't see that making his teammates look at him differently. Clement says, I actually have Peacock streaming, so there will be NFL games, particularly Christmas games. Okay, so it is Peacock that they're doing the Christmas games with. So yeah, I know things like that can affect revenue, and revenue obviously impacts the salary cap every year. So stuff like that I kind of just want to look into just to present some other theories about what could possibly be going on. Because it's kind of a fun topic. But speaking of fun topics, we just passed an hour, so I want to answer Brian's question and then get out of here because I am tired. So let me pull up this information because y'all know I like to be accurate when I talk about this stuff. But there was a development today. And also, I want to see if there's just been any other developments because I checked in the afternoon and I want to see. I just want to make sure nothing came through after that. Okay. So nothing came through after that. But what came through today, Brian said, are they supposedly going to add an extra game? Not this year. But there are some people who do think 18 NFL games is inevitable. But that's a whole different conversation. But not this year. They're not adding extra games. They're just putting some of the games on Christmas Day. Clement says, so if the NFL is adding an 18th game, they, in my opinion, should give teams a second bye week. And they might have to. That is something that they're going to have to discuss with the players union and with the players. And I hope players get very involved in that discussion. I know sometimes the NFLPA has to handle things that, current players just don't seem to be very invested in. But I really hope that they're vocal during those discussions, because I think there are a lot of owners and NFL decision makers who simply don't understand what these players are putting themselves through. And they make decisions based on, they make decisions based on the bottom line, the interest of their revenue, and a lot of assumptions that end up being very wrong. So I agree with y'all. I do think extending the rosters would be necessary. And I do also think a second bye week would be necessary, but they have a lot to discuss in that realm. But it's not something that's going to happen this year. I doubt it. Well, I don't want to make that assumption. I was about to say I doubt it happens next year, but it's just like, it's the NFL. You never know. If they feel like that's what they need to do to keep increasing revenue, hey, it's going to happen. All right. So, the Dak Prescott case. So one thing that I do need to clarify is that although Victoria Shores and her attorneys said that they were going to refile their lawsuit in Collin County, I still have found no record of them actually refiling in Collin County. I found the counterclaim, which I still don't have a copy of, sorry, but I found record of a counterclaim. And then I found what I found today, which is another motion to dismiss. Give me a second. My throat is killing me. Okay, so it's another motion to dismiss, and the description of it says, or the comments say, defendants joint anti-slap motion to dismiss. And this is why I'm laughing. I'm going to read the definition of anti-slap. So SLAP is SLAPP. It stands for Strategic Lawsuits Against Public Participation. So I'm going to read, for the sake of us all being on the same page and to make sure I'm not giving you any misinformation, I'm going to read this definition right off of texaslawhelp.org. It says, SLAP suits are lawsuits filed to stop a person or group from speaking out or exercising their First Amendment rights. The Texas Citizens Participation Act, which is basically the law that deals with SLAP lawsuits in Texas, it says the Texas Citizens Participation Act creates a way for people to challenge SLAP suits. Now, the reason why I kind of started laughing when you asked me this question, Brian, and when I started reading the comments is because the purpose of the Texas Citizens Participation Act is to protect things like freedom of speech. So if I go on Twitter and I say, Target sucks, every time I go there, I have a bad experience and I end up returning everything I buy. Let's say there's somebody who represents Target and they decide to sue me just for saying that. And it's not so much that they have evidence that I'm lying or anything like that. But what they're hoping is that by filing a lawsuit against me, I'll recant my statements because I'm afraid of what might happen if their lawsuit is successful. That is a SLAP lawsuit because they are basically using litigation to try to infringe upon my freedom of speech. So by them requesting dismissal, hold on, let me read it exactly. Let me go back. Oh, did I lose the link already? I have too many tabs open. Okay, so their motion to dismiss, once again, it says defendants joint anti-SLAP motion to dismiss. So by them filing an anti-SLAP motion to dismiss, they're basically saying this case should be dismissed because this person filed this lawsuit in order to infringe upon our rights. This person filed this lawsuit in order to intimidate us into not exercising our First Amendment rights. And I'm just like, y'all sued this man for $100 million. It's not like this woman just went on social media or went to a news outlet and told her story. Y'all tried to get $100 million out of this man. So yes, you're being sued for extortion. And it's crazy to me for a number of reasons. One, they said they were going to refile and they haven't. Two, when asked about refiling, one of the attorneys said there's a lot of things that we can sue him for, which I think is a really inappropriate statement to make in the first place. But they made it sound like they had just so much evidence, and so just they had so much support for what they were doing that they could sue Dak Prescott for something, is basically how that statement came off. So how do you go from that to, well, you should actually drop the case altogether because he's just trying to intimidate us? And I'm just like, I thought you said there was a bunch of stuff you could sue him for. I hope this isn't what you meant. And when I get like this, I do have to clarify. Just because the representation is looking crazy doesn't necessarily mean that this woman lied. I don't know if she did or not. I'm not going to try to claim whether she did or not. I don't know. But the actions being taken by her representation definitely are not helping her public perception. They're not helping her out in the court of public opinion. They're really not doing her any favors at all. So here's something else that said about slap lawsuits and anti-slap motions. Let's see. It says it can be hard to figure out if a lawsuit is actually a slap lawsuit. Slap lawsuits often claim that the defendant did something harmful, such as libel, slander, or tortious interference. Additionally, slap lawsuits are sometimes used by abusers or perpetrators in domestic violence or sexual assault situations to silence their victims, according to the Public Participation Project. If you incorrectly file an anti-slap motion to dismiss, the court can make you pay the other side for defense costs. It is important to identify correctly whether your lawsuit is actually a slap lawsuit or not before proceeding with any anti-slap motion to dismiss. So I'm hoping that they at least did their due diligence in determining whether or not Dak's lawsuit falls under the category. Based on what I've read, I haven't gone to law school, but based on what I've read, it doesn't, because they actually did request $100 million. So even if it turns out that he's wrong and, he requested a trial by jury, and if the jury is like, hey, we don't believe you deserve compensation or damages for this, we don't believe that they're extorting you, okay. But I do believe he has a good reason to say, hey, these people are extorting me and I want something done about it. I just don't see this falling in the same category as trying to infringe on someone's rights or simply stop them from talking. So that's the development. I'm hoping at some point I get an opportunity to, I know I was just in Dallas, but I didn't get an opportunity to actually go and look at documents. So I'm hoping at some point I get an opportunity to do that and I can bring back some more details for you guys. But for now, that's what we got. So Brian, thanks for asking. I almost forgot. I had looked at it earlier today, but I didn't put it in my show notes. So it almost completely slipped my mind that happened. But that's where we are. So I'm not seeing any other questions or comments in the chat. So I'm guessing y'all are done just like I am. So now that I know y'all are cool with seeing me in my glasses, I'm going to try to go live more often. So yeah, like I always say, subscribe, keep your notifications turned on so that way you know when I go live. I don't have a schedule for it yet. I'm just going to try to go live more often. I want to work my way up to going live more and more. And hopefully not going live as late. My work schedule right now dictates that this is the situation, but I do want to get back to going live at a decent hour so that people can actually join me for these lives. All right. On that note, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you're watching this after the fact, please give me a like, give me some comments. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to throw them in the comment section and I'll be happy to answer them next time that we're live. Get some sleep. The glasses are, what does GTG mean? Is that good or bad? Oh, does that mean good to go? My brain is running through possible acronyms. Thank you, Clement, for verifying that I'm cool with my glasses. I still hate them. I think the glare is just a bit much. But yeah, like I was saying, if you're watching this after the fact, definitely leave me some comments. I'll be happy to address them next time I go live. And until next time, this has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. I'm Jazz Monet. Yes, I'm going to sleep. Thanks, guys. I'm going to sleep. I promise. I'm Jazz Monet, and I'm out.